In 2008, the 33-year-old Italian artist Pippa Bacca set out to deliver a powerful message to the world: trust. Her goal, wearing a wedding dress as a symbol of purity, was to hitchhike across 11 countries to prove that people are fundamentally good. This art performance, filled with idealism, would encounter humanity's darkest side and become an international tragedy. This is the story of that wedding dress. Born in Milan on December 9, 1974, Giuseppina Pasqualino di Marineo, known to the art world as Pippa Bacca, came from a family that had inherited a legacy of provocative and conceptual art. Her mother, Elena Manzoni, was the sister of the controversial artist Piero Manzoni, one of the pioneers of the movement known as shock art in the early 1960s. Her uncle Manzoni was known for works intended to jolt the viewer and use unconventional materials, such as his 1961 piece Artist's Shit, in which he placed his own excrement into 90 tin cans. Pippa grew up immersed in this unusual and boundary-pushing creative mindset. This artistic climate also shaped Pippa's own career. She experimented with different disciplines, from photography to collage and even embroidery. In 2004, she opened her exhibition, Surgical Mutations, with figures carved from tree leaves, and held her first solo exhibition in Milan in 2006. But at the core of her artistic pursuit was always a desire to bring goodness and love into this world. The theme of trust, which would form the basis of her future project, was not a fantasy for her. According to her family, Pippa was accustomed to traveling by hitchhiking with her mother since childhood and saw this mode of travel as a natural act of trust. In 2007, Pippa Bacca was looking for a way to use her artistic identity to bring a tangible message of goodness and love to the world. The answer, inspired by a song, did not take long to find. She decided to undertake a radical art performance called Brides on Tour. This project was not just a trip, but a provocative question aimed at the modern world. Is humanity fundamentally trustworthy? Pippa answered this question with a wholehearted yes. Her mission was to prove that the artificial borders between nations and religions could not hinder the fundamental understanding and peaceful nature people share. This journey, in her words, was a social experiment built entirely on trust. To put this radical philosophy into action, Pippa decided to set out with her artist friend, Silvia Moro. At the center of the project were the white wedding dresses they saw as the ultimate symbol of happiness and purity. This was not just a costume, it was a performative vow. According to their agreement, they would allow their dresses to become soiled, so that the dirt of the world, the trace of every person they met, would accumulate on the white fabric. It would be a living testament to the journey. 2 wedding dresses were produced for each artist at a special atelier. One set would be worn on the trip, while the other would be kept for the museum. When the project concluded, the worn dresses, bearing all the marks of the journey, would be exhibited alongside the untouched ones. Although their plan seemed like a logistical nightmare, for them it was a philosophical necessity. They would hitchhike from Italy through 11 countries, including Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, and Turkey. The final destination was Jerusalem. To complete this massive route, they took only a small amount of money, handmade dolls to give as tokens of gratitude to those who gave them rides or shelter, a camera, some simple clothes, and a phone, thus completing their preparations. On the morning of March 8, 2008, supporters who had heard about this radical art project and wanted to wish them good luck gathered to see Pippa and Silvia off. Among this optimistic crowd, everyone was in high spirits, except for Pippa Bacca's boyfriend. He sensed the dark potential behind the project. He expressed his serious concerns about the journey's safety and tried to dissuade Pippa from the idea, but the artist's idealism outweighed these concerns. In an interview before the trip, Pippa said the only things that frightened her were the cold weather and wild animals. She believed the entire world was as flawless as her own heart. She was unaware of the danger she was stepping into. Pippa's boyfriend put Pippa and Sylvia, wearing their protective helmets, on motorcycles and set off toward the intercity highway. When they reached the highway, they finished this last safe journey and handed the motorcycles over to friends. Pippa gave her boyfriend one last tight hug, and then, with Sylvia, in their pure white wedding dresses, they began to hitchhike for the first car to pass, hopeful to prove their trust in humanity. According to their plan, the first stop was Venice. But this was not a vacation. It was a meticulously executed performative mission. Pippa and Sylvia turned every moment of this trust experiment into evidence. The photographs taken, the diaries kept, and the blog Pippa wrote on a website kept the digital pulse of the project. This stream of content constantly fed the Italian media and an audience that was curiously following this strange, white-clad journey. Their survival strategy was the most radical component of the project. The two artists planned to solve the problem of where to stay at night through Servas International, a global network offering voluntary hosting to travelers and students. Each evening, they took refuge in the homes of people they met that day through this network, testing their philosophy in their most vulnerable state. It was complete surrender. Amidst this surrender, an interesting point caught their attention. In the homes they visited, at the tables they shared, almost no one asked them the most obvious question. Why are you wearing wedding dresses? Analytical. It was a lack of reaction as provocative as the project itself. As if these two women were accepted as part of an untouchable dream, existing outside the rules of daily life. Pippa filled this silence with her own artistic ritual. The wedding dress was not just a costume. It had to become a living canvas. She asked the women she met along the way to leave a trace of themselves by sewing a small motif onto the white fabric. The dress was no longer just a symbol of purity, but was transforming into a shared record of humanity, collecting a piece of every culture it touched. Pippa knew this would make the side-by-side exhibition of the worn and unworn dresses far more meaningful. Pippa also met with nurses and midwives, washing their feet as a sign of respect for their professions. For 2 weeks, the project had proceeded flawlessly. The white dresses crossed half of Europe. On March 20th, the Asian leg of the project began, and the two artists arrived in Turkey. But in Istanbul, an invisible crack formed in their shared journey. Pippa and Sylvia decided to continue separately for a while. Their plan was to reunite in Lebanon. The exact reason for this separation is unknown. However, it is alleged that their interpretations of the trust philosophy differed. Pippa, true to the spirit of the project, was in a state of courageous surrender, accepting every door and every car without question. Sylvia, on the other hand, was more cautious, wanting to choose the vehicles they rode in and the people they trusted. No one realized at that moment that this separation was, in fact, a life-saving decision. Sylvia's caution guided her onto a safe path, while Pippa's unwavering idealism propelled her forward, alone in her white dress, toward the approaching darkness. March 31st, 2008. Pippa, continuing her journey alone in Turkey, wrote on her blog. She wrote that everything is going well, that the people she met offered her local dishes, and that wearing the wedding dress made it easier to communicate. I am encountering unexpected kindness, Pippa said, finishing her post with the words, "Trusting people is an art," but this would be the artist's final signature left upon the world. Immediately after these lines were written, Pippa was never heard from again. Her blog page fell silent. Her phone rang insistently, but no one answered. Her family in Milan, hearing those unanswered calls, began to feel those serious concerns from before the trip turning into a terrible reality. On April 3rd, they arrived in Turkey in a panic and anxious filed a missing person report. Pippa's photograph in her bright wedding dress was no longer part of an art project, but an urgent call for help posted on the streets of the city where she was last seen. As the search continued, a critical call came from a gas station. An employee remembered a woman in a wedding dress on March 31st. The same day Pippa wrote her last optimistic blog post. He had seen her getting into a truck. When police reviewed the station's security camera footage, they clearly identified the truck and its driver. The suspect's name was Murat Karataş. Finding the perpetrator was, surprisingly, the easiest part of the investigation. Murat had taken Pippa's cell phone and inserted his own SIM card. Following the phone's signal, police caught the man who had demolished her philosophy of trust as an art. Murat Karataş was not an unknown entity to the system. He was an individual with a prior criminal record, previously convicted of theft. In his statement, he said that on March 31st, as he was passing the gas station in his truck, he noticed the vulnerable woman in the white dress standing by the side of the road.
Murat put on a calm and helpful mask. He stopped and offered Pippa a ride. In that moment, Pippa Bacca didn't see a criminal. She saw another good person, proof of her project. She trusted him and got into the truck. But this trust was her final act. Murat ended Pippa's idealistic journey by driving her to a wooded area where no one could hear her. In that desolate place, he betrayed the very philosophy of trust the artist was trying to prove, and ended her life. He then took her few remaining belongings, especially the phone, and left the scene. Murat's confession led the teams to that desolate, wooded area, and there, beneath the soil and tree branches, they found the white wedding dress Pippa was no longer breathing. The performance dedicated to the goodness of humanity had come to the darkest possible end. The journey intended to send a message of trust to the world had been cut short, precisely at the point where that trust was betrayed. Pippa's tragedy created a national wave of shock and shame in Turkey. The fact that an artist's quest for trust ended this way on their soil struck a blow to the society's collective conscience. The media's reaction was severe. Newspapers announced this national shame with headlines in Italian. The headlines, "Forgive us, Pippa, and we are ashamed," were not just reporting news, they were crying out against the stain on a nation's ideal of hospitality. Another artist responded to this collective shame with a symbolic act. Activist Bingöl Elmas wore a black wedding dress, representing mourning, in contrast to Pippa's white dress of purity. This act, as both a protest and a memorial, completed the Turkish leg of Pippa's violently interrupted journey on her behalf, also by hitchhiking. This societal reaction reached the highest levels of the state. The president of Turkey at the time called the president of Italy to personally convey the sincere sorrow and condolences of the Turkish people. The judicial process, under this public pressure, moved quickly. The court gave Murat a life sentence. The future he stole from Pippa became for him an endless darkness defined by four walls. He will spend the rest of his life alone in that small cell. This tragedy didn't just take a life, it split the soul of the project in two. Pippa's travel partner and the project's other half, Silvia, returned to Milan alone. Weighted by this trauma, Silvia Moro quit art. The original plan was to make the evidence of their experiences visible by exhibiting the two dirty dresses from the journey alongside their clean twins. Pippa's untouched, clean wedding dress is still exhibited, a silent monument to the heavy price paid for her idealism and that philosophy of trust. Pippa Bacca had taken her art and her faith in people with her on a journey to prove that people are fundamentally good. Tragically, in her final moments, she lost both and departed from this life.